For centuries, humanity has feared what it doesn't know and what it can't understand. And sometimes that fear has turned deadly. In the grip of paranoia and superstition, thousands of innocent people were accused, tortured, and executed, all in the name of hunting witches. This fear became so widespread and profitable that it gave birth to an entire profession: witch hunting. And today, we're diving into the twisted and terrifying history of witch hunts. In the early days of witch hunting, it didn't take much to be accused. All it took was a grudge, a suspicion, or someone daring to be different. If you threatened someone's beliefs or were blamed for misfortune, you could easily find yourself labeled a witch. As fear spread like wildfire, so did the demand for so-called professional witch hunters. One of the most infamous figures in this dark chapter of history was Matthew Hopkins, the self-proclaimed witch-finder general. In March 1644, Hopkins claimed he encountered 6 witches in Manningtree who allegedly tried to kill him, and that was just the beginning. Over the next 3 years, from 1644 to 1647, Hopkins was responsible for the trials and executions of more than 300 alleged witches. His reign of terror stretched across Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, Huntingdon, and the wider East Anglia region. All for a hefty fee, of course. Local magistrates would pay him the equivalent of a month's wages for each town he cleansed of witches. Hopkins and his 2 assistants used cruel and often bizarre methods to extract confessions. One of his most notorious techniques was the pricking test. If a person had any skin deformity, which Hopkins called the witch's mark, he would stab it with a needle. If the victim didn't feel pain or didn't bleed, they were declared a witch. Rumors even spread that Hopkins used a retractable needle to fake the results and ensure more guilty verdicts. Another horrifying method was the infamous water test. Suspects were tied up and thrown into a body of water. If they floated, they were deemed guilty, supposedly because the water rejected them for renouncing their baptism. If they sank, well, they were innocent, but that often didn't save their lives. Ironically, legend has it that Hopkins himself fell victim to the very fear he spread. Rumors claimed that in 1647, he was accused of witchcraft and failed his own tests. But historical records suggest a more mundane end. He likely died of tuberculosis or some other illness. Before his death, however, he published a book called The Discovery of Witches, cementing his brutal legacy in history. The story of Matthew Hopkins and the witch hunts is a chilling reminder of how fear and ignorance can lead to cruelty and injustice. And though these times are long past, the lessons they teach us about mass hysteria and scapegoating remain more relevant than ever. In 1486, 2 influential professors, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, published a groundbreaking and chilling handbook titled Malleus Maleficarum, also known as the Hammer of Witches. This manual became a cornerstone for witch hunts across Europe, detailing in graphic fashion how to identify, accuse, and legally prosecute suspected witches. It claimed that witches could perform unimaginable acts, such as shape-shifting and engaging in unholy relations with the devil. According to the Malleus Maleficarum, torture was not only acceptable but encouraged as a means to extract confessions from accused witches. The handbook was notably misogynistic, focusing almost exclusively on women as the perpetrators of witchcraft. It was used with deadly authority, notably under the reign of Pope Innocent VIII, to root out alleged witches in the name of defending Christianity. Both Roman Catholics and Protestants adopted it as a guide in the war against heresy and witchcraft. Nearly a century earlier, in 1374, Pope Gregory XI had already declared that demons were behind all forms of magic, opening the door for the prosecution of individuals accused of heresy. By the time the 1600s rolled around, Malleus Maleficarum had gone through 28 editions, each spreading its dangerous teachings further, fueling the witch hunts that would devastate communities for centuries. Another notorious figure during the witch hunts was a Scottish man known only as the Ballman. Hired by the Puritan authorities of Newcastle around 1650, his role in the region's witch trials became infamous, later known as the Newcastle Trials. Claiming that he could identify witches by their physical appearance, the Ballman is thought to be responsible for the execution of over 120 women. Upon his arrival, the Ballman allegedly instructed the local villagers to bring forth any complaints or suspicions regarding women they believed to be witches. These women would then be summoned for trial. Much like Matthew Hopkins, the Ballman used the method of skin pricking as a means of determining guilt. If the woman bled, she was deemed innocent, but if she didn't, the presumption of guilt was all but guaranteed. The Ballman reportedly earned between 20 and 30 shillings for each successful conviction, a sum equivalent to about 10 times the average daily wage at the time. This substantial reward proved to be a powerful motivator for those looking to profit from accusations, regardless of the truth. In a cruel twist of fate, the Ballman himself would later face execution, meeting the same grim end he had dealt to so many others. Along with Matthew Hopkins, the Ballman's name became synonymous with the deaths of hundreds of innocent women, their lives claimed by the hysteria of the witch hunts. Between the 1300s and the late 1600s, Europe was gripped by the fear of witchcraft, leading to the execution of tens of thousands, mostly women. Witch hunts erupted across the continent and beyond, though not all societies shared the same views on witchcraft. Different regions had varying interpretations of what it meant to be a witch, shaping how witchcraft was perceived and dealt with. In the West, witchcraft was often seen as something anyone could practice, using supernatural forces through spells and rituals. But in other parts of the world, a witch was thought to be someone who inherently possessed supernatural powers, almost as if they were born with them. Regardless of the interpretation, witches and magic were closely associated with the devil, and being accused of witchcraft was a dangerous path that almost always ended in tragedy. The accused were often subjected to horrific torture, enduring unimaginable pain until they were driven to falsely confess, hoping to end their suffering. These confessions, however, were not only a desperate attempt to survive, they also led to others being accused, tortured, and executed, creating a horrific cycle that continued for years. The witch hunts weren't just about belief in the supernatural. They were about fear, paranoia, and power. Entire communities turned against each other, and countless lives were ruined by accusations that had little to do with reality. The legacy of these trials remains a chilling reminder of how fear can fuel mass hysteria and lead to devastating consequences. Between 1484 and 1750, an estimated 200,000 people across Western Europe fell victim to the brutal wave of witch hunts, accused, tortured, or executed under suspicion of practicing witchcraft. Out of this staggering number, around 110,000 were formally prosecuted. Even more chilling, somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 of those accused met their end through execution, their lives cut short by fear and superstition that gripped the continent for centuries.